All right, I would like to welcome everybody to our session that starts at 9:45. Glad everyone can make it in and be here. So, what we're talking about today is how to strengthen your schedule with BIM and Lean. And the idea that I've heard quite a bit in the past where people talking, they think that you're either using a CPM or you're using Lean. And I disagree with that. I think CPM and Lean support each other, and you have to have both, and they have to combine with each other. And then with Lean supporting your CPM and BIM then supporting your CPM, I think we end up with a much stronger scenario and a much better situation to be in. So, get on the right page. All right, the objectives that I had for today was to cover the idea that BIM, 4D, and Lean all work together to create a CPM situation where we have a stronger schedule and a better situation. As the keynote this morning pointed out, that CPM should be a tool. And yes, it can be a weapon, but it is better off if it is a tool. I want to go through that with the elements of how do we use it as a tool as far as scope definition, critical path analysis, and get feedback, buy into the schedule, getting people to participate, and then, of course, our advanced logistics that we can get when we're using the 4D and the CPM. So, I realize that for many of you in the room, this isn't your first rodeo. And I will ask the question again, how many of you in here have created a CPM schedule? The vast majority, that's what I expected at a conference. Okay, now how many of you created a 4D schedule? Over half. That's a lot better than we've gotten in the past. That's great. So we're coming along, we're doing a lot more of it. So because this isn't your first rodeo, and it's not mine either, but that doesn't mean we still can't learn something. In fact, we have to learn something. Tom showed this yesterday, same idea of the graph, that the design and construction industry is less productive than we were 50 years ago. Okay, he went through yesterday, the top bar is the rest of industry, and the bottom bars are all different takes on construction, design and construction. Personally, I find that embarrassing. I love to build, right? This is my industry, this is my life, and we're less productive than we were 50 years ago. So I really want to change that, and I really want to be able to do it better. I think that BIM, Lean, continuous improvement is our only opportunity. So, skeptics are welcome, right? I want your participation. I've already made you raise your hands a couple times. I've already had you participate. We already had some great participation from Charles up front here as I got started a little earlier than I should have. But as we go through, I want to be able to talk about these things and have conversations about how we've used them and how we've done them. So, any questions so far? All right. So, many of you will be familiar with the good old TV show, The $6 Million Man. I used to love it. Okay, Steve Austin was a good guy, right? He was an astronaut. He was a hero already, wasn't he? And then the difference was he had an accident, but when he had the accident, he ended up being
better than he was before. Better, stronger, faster.
That's exactly what I want to do with our CPM schedules. It's the same CPM schedule. It's the same processes that we've been going through for many, many years. We just need to make them better, faster, stronger. We just enhance them. We add technology to them to make them better. So the first scenario I want to run through is when we're doing scope definition. This is one of the major principles of building a schedule, is defining what scope we're building it for. So presentation, there's lots of light in here. If it was darker, it'd be easier to see. But the idea is we have two sheets, plan sheets. Now, this project was a $300 million project, not 300 million, I'm sorry, 300,000 square foot, $60 million project. Okay, so it had a big, good set of plans. It was just core and shell, which makes it a little bit easier. But I want some thoughts from the room. You know, a $60 million project. How much time would one of you spend flipping through drawings and sheets to understand the scope of this project so that you could build your schedule? Thought? A week and a half, okay. Others? Okay. Week and a half from input from the stakeholders. You can see these documents are from stakeholders. Somebody's taken a highlighter too and marked them up. I actually helped do the schedule on this project. Week and a half, is that other people, other thoughts? Couple weeks, okay. All right. So yes. So that's part of our scope definition, isn't it? So if you had a full set of bid documents and you're starting to build a schedule, I would think we're hitting about a level 3 schedule. Does that give us a good baseline to work off of? Yes. So in this situation, we had the project. Are we still at a week and a half, or do we change the rules? Good? Okay. Great. Thank you. What? So of course we have, I mean, the bid documents had a schedule. They said you're starting in February and you are done by, I think it was mid-October. And so it was fast, right? No, we are not cost loading. That makes life a little bit easier. But when we're cost loading, I don't know, developing the scope of work, yeah, that's the scope of what we're building. So yeah, we did not need to cost load here. Are we still looking at about a week and a half of flipping documents to get our head around the scope? Okay, because your caveat on not spending a week and a half is you've already built a schedule, so you've already been in the documents. You've already spent time in them. I agree. Thank you. So if you include all of the time you spent in those documents prior to that, developing your level 2 schedule pre-bid, and now developing your level 3, we still are going to spend a lot of time on it. Yes, sir. So that makes a big difference, doesn't it? And that's the scope definition. And of course, this is the BIM presentation, so y'all knew I was going there, right? Okay. So yeah. So I left those 2 sheets up there, but I doubt, look at those 2 sheets, anybody could have gotten much time. It was probably up there we probably talked for 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes going back and forth. But how much time in 3 minutes can you really get the scope of a project? Whereas when I throw this model up here, in the last 30 seconds, you probably have a much greater understanding of the scope of work than you had by just looking at drawings. My proposal is that when we're creating schedules, we are much faster, more efficient, leaner, if we are using the model to build our schedule. Now, have other people in this room experienced the same thing, or have they experienced it differently? Anybody experienced the same thing? Hands? Okay, so we got a few. So any other experienced it differently, that it was more work? None. Yes. Yeah, so the point he made, so it's recorded for others, is that the more involvement people have up front in the BIM process, the more understanding they have of the scope. And so instead of walking up to somebody and dropping a set of plans on their desk and saying, get familiar with the project, you've been eating it in little chunks. And then you're very familiar with it when the time comes to actually produce the schedule. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the summary is design bid build is much harder because we don't have the models up front. If we have a negotiated sort of contract, we can get them sooner, and then it's easier to get involved. And so we almost have two different scenarios here. Yes. Why is that? That we don't get the models? Yes, that's often the situation I see. And that's what's so exciting about being in a presentation with like Massport and the work they're doing, is that's an owner that is producing the documents that's stating this is the value of the model and this is how the model will be used. One of the best I've seen anywhere is Texas A&M and College Station, their construction department. Everything they have to do is all hard bid, but they have a set of documents that align that the model is going to be shared and how it's going to be shared, and it makes it a lot easier to do it. So, right now our company does, it's easy. If it's design build, we know it's going to be models in 4D. No question, it's going to be simple. But if it's a bid scenario, that changes it. Now we're talking to architects, engineers, what models do you have? What are you going to share? What are we going to do? Because I don't want to be going back and recreating a model. That's not very efficient. I want to be getting a model that was created as part of the design process. And like Chris pointed out, that if you're involved in the process, it goes better. That holds true for the architects and engineers as well. If they're actually building in the model to produce their documents, they produce better documents, and actually for a lower cost. So, all right, if I take this one step further, then what I'm working with multiple schedulers to get us better at, we do it some of the time, but not all the time, I want us actually building the schedule with the model. Not building them separate from each other, but actually tying them together. And not actually creating the activities with the model as a background. I think it makes us faster at building the schedule, and we get a better schedule when we're done. Not as apt to have scope gaps and miss parts of scope. And it makes it that much easier to understand. So it sounds like from agreement from the group back and forth that in scope definition, we feel like it's better if we go with CPM and schedule to create a 4D model and produce it that way. So next, any thoughts or questions on scope definition? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. It changes over time. And so if you only have a very low level model, if it's an LOD 100 or an LOD 200, then you would probably using a level 1 or 2 schedule. And it turns out that the AACEI level of detail for schedules align very nicely with the BIM Forum LOD specification level of development for models. Yes. Okay. And so, yes, we sometimes, especially with design and engineer models, our schedules are usually much more detailed. And so we end up with kind of some gaps and things not being shown. But at least we represent what we do have. Have you found that to be a problem, or is that just an observation? Yes to both, problem and an observation. All right. Okay. Okay, critical path analysis is the next area. So previously, if we're analyzing critical path, we're going to publish a schedule somewhat like this, right? And of course, how many pages was this? Oh, it's probably 68, 70 pages. Here's the critical path itself. I think it was only down to 9 pages. This is what we would do, and we'd send the critical path out and tell the superintendent, the project manager, hey, go through this, look through this, the CPM, and tell me what you think of it. Okay. Here I actually have the PDF version. There it is. The unfiltered one that was the whole schedule was 44 pages. And then the filtered one was just CPM was clear down to 8 pages. But we're used to seeing these documents and produce them all the time. Once again, if somebody sits down, but let's say we're in even a claims situation, or we're just trying to support a project that, let's say we're not in the claims, we have a project that's behind schedule. and they want some help. And so they're calling in one of us as a schedule expert to figure out, okay, how do we cut some time out of this schedule? If they set down a 44-page CPM schedule in front of you, 44-page, 8.5 by 11, this is about a $50 million project, how much time do you think it'll take you to, even if they give you the XER file, how much time are you going to spend understanding that schedule? Thoughts? Oh, if you haven't seen the prints, a whole lot. So if you sit down with the prints and the schedule, you're a couple days probably, right? So now let's contrast that and let's come across to our BIM and our 4D. So let's look at this schedule. This is going to be the same project that 44-page schedule was representing. This is, of course, no critical path. This is just the schedule of the structure of the building. And so let's look at it a minute. That's a long list of activities on the right, but those are your current activities. But generally, for flow of the building, you're already starting to get a pretty good understanding of what's happening. Can you guys actually see it? Okay, wanted to make sure. So your active activities are green, and then your others are installing and coming along. Okay, so basically we've got two phases. Now we're coming in with slabs, and now we've got a lower area in the middle that we have to pull together and tie it all together. Now, you're probably getting a fairly good understanding. You got steel construction taking place. If you were really watching the timeline at the bottom, you'd get a feel for durations. But if I handed this to a superintendent or to somebody that was coming in trying to figure out what the schedule is, I have now saved them days of work, because now they understand this that much quicker and it's that much easier to get the feel of. And we're going to take it just through structure. But I didn't filter out. You see some of the interiors, some of the windows and things starting as it comes along. All right, any thoughts or questions on that schedule? Okay, so your question was, why did we start the slab? You're talking probably right about there, right? There. So we have two different slabs. This slab coming across this direction. Could have started from here against the walls. The other side. So I think what happened in this schedule, and I didn't have the privilege of building this schedule, so I am making some conceptual thoughts here. But when I watched the schedule, they had to start here because everything was deeper, because you've got an elevation change. And they had to have this finished before they could come and backfill. And this schedule, the 4D model, did not show any backfill. And I think that robs us a little bit. 4D has a hard time with earthwork. But if it had shown backfill, which I know had to take place here against these walls, then while they were waiting for this backfill to take place, they were getting this work done out of the way. But that left this as the critical path. They had to get the backfill done before they could do all the piles and start the footings and foundations. And so then that allowed them, with this being, the flow being critical from here to here and over, I think that's why they started this. Now, this slab, I don't know how detailed we were when we created this schedule. Because what might have happened is this slab could have been poured in a different scenario. Somebody picked a west-east model demonstration of that coming that way. I don't know if it actually got poured that way or if they updated it. In fact, this schedule is out for review to get that exact feedback, because this project is still putting piles in the ground. So this is an active real project, and I'm waiting for some of that feedback to come back and to see what the construction team actually says about it. I got George Krill out there. He is a great superintendent, and he's also a good skeptic, and he will tell me everything that's wrong with this schedule. And he'll let the guy that's building it fix it, and that's a great thing to have. So we'll remake this 2 or 3 times. Did I answer your question? Okay, another one in the back. Yeah. So the comment was made that the gentleman often has to have a CAD or BIM person on board to subdivide the model. And I find myself balancing the same thing. I have some folks that I can go in there and get to cut stuff up when I need to. And then I also use the subdivision tools quite often in the software just to break it up myself. And so I found a simple slab I can usually subdivide fairly easily. But if I'm into a complex excavation and I've got to break that into a lot of different chunks, it's easier just to get a CAD person to help me. Yeah, you try to work them together and build them. Thank you. So that was the schedule. Now, you guys probably have an idea in your head where the critical path flows. Let's see what this shows for the critical path and actually watch our critical path on the project. I probably should have made this one a little bit faster. But I've gone in with a filter. Yeah, and it took me like a couple hours to figure this out the first time, like 5 or 6 hours. But now that it's figured out, it's pretty easy to take a standard CPM schedule, just apply the filters, and produce a quick video of it. Now, the one that hits me on this project that I don't understand is why none of the piles were critical, right? Well, I would have really thought that the piles underneath those footings would have been critical. And so there's something there that's not quite clicking for me, and I've got to go figure out what that is. It could have been submittal approval. It could have been, yes, it could have been. There's all sorts of things it could have been, but really, a lot of those things I would hope we could have alleviated. I would like my critical path to actually be physical items. I don't like it when my critical path is, and if my critical path is jumping around or going crazy. Now, one thing that's interesting, if you notice that steel came up red, it was critical, and then it turned white. The detailing activity behind it is not a critical activity. And so it overwrites it and it turns it back to white with everything else. And so you don't see all the critical items when you're done, but you see the flow through the project. So the general flow is, of course, starting with on the right side, working our way to the center, and then over to the left. All of the slab and foundation work on the left side had float time to it, and then our steel came up. Any other thoughts or questions? This is a perfect opportunity. Yes. I only did longest path. I could do near critical. I just did longest path because I know that superintendent, and if I show him anything red that's beyond critical path, he will expedite it too, and he'll put overtime in. So we'll just see, and let him work with the critical path first, and then once he is really good at making the entire project early on everything critical. Because everything that's out there, he'll put overtime in and he'll bring it in because he wants to build time on his schedule ahead of time so that he has it to use when something goes wrong. He's really good. Yes, sir. Okay, so we produce every 6 weeks or every 4 weeks, every time we get a schedule update. Then, like I said, this particular project is working off of models of others because they haven't started, I think they're just in piles now. And so we are ahead of time. And so every month when they do the schedule update, we'll produce 6-week look-aheads. And the idea is 6-week look-aheads with a regular view like you just saw, and then a 6-week look-ahead with a critical path. And then, of course, and then a complete update of the entire schedule. And we produce the original, the schedule file itself, the SP file. So, and everybody has free access to the open viewer. And so everybody, even the tile guy that just has a little teeny contract on this project can download the free viewer and be in the schedule and actually filter it for his activities. And then we produce videos for the people that, a foreman in the field or somebody that just wants to look at it on their phone real quick. Did that answer your question? Okay. My goodness, I just cannot go through slides fast enough this morning. Yes, that is how we tie all this together. And so I'll have pictures of that. If you have a particular question now, I'll hit it, but otherwise I'll roll till I see the slides. Of course, generally positive, but I've got skeptics out there. And if they'll give me good feedback, I love it. But there's some that won't give you feedback that just don't want to change because it's different. Okay, the negative feedback is always, we don't have time for this. We don't have time to wait for these models. We don't have time for this. We're just going to go build it. And so then I have to push back against that, right? You don't have time to plan. Wait a second. I know you're going to have time to redo this 3 times if you don't plan. And so I work with that. The other feedback I always get is, I've been doing this for 85 years and you're not going to tell me how to do it. I think he's fibbing. I really think it was only like 78 years. But yeah, they're pretty, and so that's the other thing, just lack of change is generally the feedback.
Have you ever ran across a project where you went and told the project team, let's wait, even though you got the notice to proceed to start, we're going to wait 15 or 20 days to plan before you start activities and say we're going to finish faster?
Well, so I've been able to usually get inside they say we're not going to wait for it. They think it's going to take longer, but it really doesn't. Because a traditional submittal process, which you have submittals with like every scope of work, usually takes a few weeks anyways. But if they're trying to submit the entire building, that adds extra time. When we drop it to a BIM process, we can coordinate and submit underground, first floor, second floor, or west wing, east wing, and we can actually get their construction started faster than a traditional submittal process. And we can produce we can produce the 4D schedule just as fast. In fact, I think we actually produce the 4D schedule faster than the other one. Okay. And so really it doesn't, they say that, but really what it is I had superintendents that are not used to being heard when it comes to the schedule. They're used to being handed a level 3 schedule that has little to none of their input and being told this is how you build it, and it wasn't right. It was a very good level 3 schedule, but it's not to level 4. It hasn't had the feedback and the critique to get right. And that's usually why they say we don't have time for this, is they don't want to sit down and give the feedback because they've given up on the system. If I can turn that around and get them back into the system where they know that their changes will be applied, put back into the 4D, visualized, and distributed to the team, they start to jump on it really quick. And so my real problems are from my mediocre superintendents. Yes, I get much better buy-in, especially since I spent 2 years on a project with George, who I keep talking about here, and I was a scheduler and I was in his office every day. What do I make better? How do I fix this? And so that relationship and understanding that makes it much more significant and easier to do. Yes. Yes, sir.
So do the superintendents use the software, or do they just watch the video and provide the feedback and wait for scheduler?
Most of them are just watching the video. Most of my superintendents are out in the field. They just need to understand the schedule and review it. And so they're looking at the video, they're in the last planner sessions. Very few of the superintendents are using the software. Now my project managers, every project manager that used to sit down with official CPM scheduling software, I am converting them slowly and surely, one by one, over to using the 4D software. Quit working in the other one, make your changes in the new one, and we'll feed it back in. Because yeah, lots of the specs still require, Primavera. That spec is very well established, and it's going to take a long time for owners to change that. But I think we can change that quickly now that we actually have powerful software out there to do it with. And so I propose that to owners on a regular basis. You can go with this software, or you can go this other route, and they have a free viewer, and everybody on your entire team can look at the schedule whenever they want, and they can filter and sort it however they want. All right. So buy-in, feedback, ownership. You guys have led me right into this, right? We're talking about the superintendents use it. How does it work? Basically what we have here is a schedule update, right? The blank fields, actual start, actual finish, remaining duration that we do for a monthly update. We still publish this, even with the 4D. We still need that feedback and information. But what I find is people are actually starting to carry it more. They're actually using it because they feel like the schedule is relevant. I'm not losing those superintendent foremen that used to think that schedule is just a piece of paper. They're actually getting into it. And we talked about earlier about being involved in the process. This particular one is a project. This was a proposal. This is a level 2 schedule like you guys were talking about. You're going to see lots of long bars, lots of large areas on this earthwork project. But the idea was when we came back and we did this, they could actually see the flow of it taking place as the different scopes of work kind of go around and fill in and redo this entire retainage area. And so and what we do is we have a process. It's a very lean process. We meet daily. We're preparing for the proposal. We're going through it. We meet daily. We walk through the schedule every day. And they look at it and say, no, change this, no, change that. Sometimes that meeting has been 5 minutes. We all get on and there's nothing really to look at today, and then we all get off. And sometimes that meeting is 2 hours with an additional hour later that afternoon with one of the 4D champions that sets his own meeting that afternoon to call people in to say, hey, we need more review on this. And we build it as we go. And then people are reviewing it and it comes along. That is lean, right? That is small steps, not trying to bundle the work. We have that tendency, all people do that. We want to do all this at once and then turn it out there, and then we go back and change all of it again. But if we make it in small steps, here's this little bit and then change it, here's this little bit and change it, wow, we get the buy-in and everybody does a lot better. Thoughts or questions on that aspect of it? This was pre-award. This is pre-project. Okay? All right, here we go. This is award or project, feedback buy-in. These are my Post-its on the wall, right? This was building the original feedback on the schedule, right? Doing our last planner system. How many of you have participated in a last planner pool session? There, a good number of people. Okay, so the big advantage I see in the last planner pool scenario is that it gets the people that are doing the work, foreman level, superintendent level, involved in the schedule. They actually are looking at it and they are writing their own notes. I keep seeing software out there to take all this, onto the tablet and all this stuff. There's a huge advantage to them writing their own notes. Now, when the software is available and each guy can use his own tablet and type in his own thing and arrange it, then I might go there. But I need each individual. I don't want somebody else doing this for them. I want their buy-in and their feedback. And then, of course, we roll this back into the schedule. And so here's our 6-week look ahead. Those are the Post-it notes from that project. Here's a recent 6-week look ahead from that project. Now, you'll notice those other 4D models I showed, you guys got a quick understanding really of the flow of the work and things like that because they were all a higher level. They were a level 3 schedule, sort of level 3 model. This is level 400. This is fabrication models coming back in. That ductwork is what the ductwork guy is going to send to his bending machine and CDC machine to actually cut with. Right? That's what he's going to use. And so this is really detailed. And this bogs down a computer fast. But it's the right thing to do. And so looking forward to file sizes getting smaller on this one because it's hard. We end up I think there's probably about 40 to 50 individual models that you're seeing right here. There's different areas, there's 2 areas, and then there's all the different trades and everybody in there, from metal studs to everything else. Now, it's hard for us sitting here to understand what just happened because we're not into it. But the people that are doing those last planner sessions that are adjusting their Post-it notes, they see this and they get it and they like it. Yes? So we are still balancing back and forth. Let me go forward a slide, and that might help you even better. Okay, that was a first session. That was early on. This is a later session. This is where it's a little more refined. We're starting to see the 6 weeks looking a little easier to deal with. When we do the 4D right, we already have the buy-in, and our schedule is that much better than it used to be. So we don't see huge changes on the last planner system. And a lot of the things we're doing is, what level is this last planner? It's level 5. We're not taking the level 5 elements back into the CPM schedule. There's a lot of things happening on this board that will never go back into our CPM schedule. It's not worth the effort to do that. But we keep it at level 4 on our CPM schedule, pick up the little nuances, the occasional little, our own intern milestones and things like that. And, this is things like, relocating all the pallets of block from the north side to the south side, or little logistics things, stuff like that, that we're just not going to put in the CPM. And that balances out. Yes, sir. Okay, so you're right, it is chicken and the egg. We have to get to level 4 in order to get to level 5. Because level 4 sets our boundaries. It sets our conditions. That's what exists in our CPM schedule, is the longest path. Whereas a last planner board, it never has the longest path, right? And projects that I know of projects that thought they would just use last planner because it was so awesome, and they left the CPM behind, and they lost their longest path. They lost track of it, and they messed up. They didn't know where to focus. And so we have to build to that level 4 to get to the 5, and then that goes back and forth. That level 5 information can drive all the way down to a level 1 and change the end date of a project because it proved that there was a delay. Okay, so that gets a little different. The scheduler, superintendent, project manager kind of have to work together on that. It becomes a lot, whenever we start to do this, we raise the level of accountability on the project. It's no longer as much as an individual that's having to do it as they've got to talk to each other. Because that scheduler doesn't live this board like the superintendent and the foreman do. And that superintendent has to be able to look at this board and look at his level 4 CPM and say, this one is changing. Now, we haven't had a lot of big logic changes. Usually what we've had is project gets delayed due to terrible weather on one. We also had one where actually that was this project. The guy that was in charge of driving the piles, he had a medical condition and he was gone for 6 weeks and they couldn't find anybody to replace him. And the project lost 3 weeks of time trying to find somebody that could get out there. There was very few people that could run the rig needed on this project and we just couldn't get somebody. What do we do about that, right? You could sit there and beat on the sub and you can beat them till they're dead and then your sub's dead and well, who's going to do the work anyways? Or you can jump into your last planner system and start to recover. And so those weren't logic changes. All those were monthly updates. Monthly update shows, hey, we're 3 weeks behind, 4 weeks behind, 5 weeks behind. Add some weather on top of that, things get bad fast. And then your monthly updates, in fact, they started doing week updates every 2 weeks because the scheduler was trying to keep up with the last planner board. And he was like, hey, the information's there, I might as well put it in. We started publishing every 2 weeks. And so he was updating every 2 weeks and started to see that schedule come back in, just like we would hope it would. And then we see that the more and more we implement it, the better and better results we're getting. The schedule is a tool, not a weapon. And I try to use that same philosophy with my specialty contractors that I hope the owner uses with me. Did that answer the question? All right. Yes. That's in the job site office, and that's part of the last planner is the daily meetings in there every morning. Look at that board. We really don't have to take it out to them. They come to it each morning and they go out there with their last planner is how we've been doing it. And so we're not trying to really capture it. Yeah, we take regular pictures of it and we post-it notes, but we're focusing on it as a tool to get them. And so the documentation, yeah, we're probably loose on our documentation. But we're hoping to have it such a good tool we don't need it as a weapon. Yes, sir.
So when you're using last planner system, you say you don't document. Have you found a way to at least track the number of stickies or the number of items completed by the subcontractors?
Our PPC, our project percent complete, or plan percent complete. Yes, we do the PPC, and that's not as much as a weapon as a tool. We track how many were not completed, how many were completed, and then that tells us where our trends are, and that's what we're looking for. Hey, the trend has been weather. And once on this particular project, we got past the medical issue. It rained and it rained and it rained, and it was an abnormal amount of rain, but of course that always is terrible because then you eat the normal amount of rain plus the abnormal and you're still behind schedule. And this is a client where it doesn't make a difference if it rained. They need their building open, right? It doesn't change their business plan, it doesn't change their dynamics, and so sure, they can give you extra days, but that just hurts the client. So what do we do to make that up? Yeah. So we do that. We collect the information we can. It always turns out the thing that I wish I had more of was grad students that are trying to get a master's degree, right? Pull them in. You track all the documents. You do all the research because it just is hard to pull. I can get anecdotal information all day long, right? It's easy to do that. But for somebody to sit down, facts, write it up, it hardly ever seems to happen because I've got project managers, superintendents, assistant project managers, and they've got a whole set of duties they're trying to do, and that is just not in the forefront of their mind. And I'm not deeply enough involved to get the information great. I pull the anecdotals and we use them all the time. It's never as deep as I would like it to be. So what ends up happening is some of our best information is where the owner then, for some reason or another, is just disagreeing with us, and then we have to write everything up to show the owner this is what happened. So some of my best BIM and scheduling data has come from those situations. Then we have to formalize the process, and we're kind of forced into it. So yes. Back to the one with the critical path. Early on, we were doing the planner sessions, and we were going through the model and the schedule, and they were looking. The planner board says, hey, there's nothing, these piles could start next week. We just don't have the submittal back. And the owner's rep's in the room and he's like, so if we got that to you in 3 days, you could start work 3 weeks early? And everyone's room says, yes, done. You'll have it in 3 days. And he went and drove to his other office and he sat down with the people and he had it, instead of it going, Army Corps of Engineers, right? Usually Army Corps of Engineers, that's a very rigid process and you don't deviate from it. He went and hand walked it through to get his project an extra 3 weeks up front. So yes, we start to see those changes. And we didn't have to ask for it. He just saw it happening. And when we combine all of this, it just starts to, they implement off each other. All right. Yes, sir. We didn't ask. We didn't ask. This was early on. We hadn't even really developed a relationship with. It was just a matter of, we looked like we were putting forth every effort to do the best that we could, and he saw a way to be a part of our team and help. And he stepped up and said, I want to help, basically, is what he did. And now, that moment established a relationship that is working very well. And that we really have a team dynamic. Now, it could have been completely different. If that had been a different owner up in the room and he was kind of like, yeah, you guys are messed up, that would have, the whole project would have been going a different direction. But we don't like those projects anyways. It was the QA folk. I can't think of his name, but he was there on site. He was the quality assurance that was there on site, part of the project, and then he went back to the officer and said, hey, this helps the project out. It doesn't cost us anything. It doesn't hurt us at all. We just turn this around in 3 days instead of 3 weeks. So it worked out really well. Okay, so earlier you talked about building this down, and the room's kind of spread out. I don't know how much you guys can read this. The idea is, if we're tying lean into it, our push schedule is our level 3 office. When you get buyout, you get buy into it, right? You just contract, everybody has to meet the level 3 schedule. That exists in P6, or for us, Synchro. And then we have a assigned baseline. It's our control. It's what must be done in order to happen on the project. Okay? This is created by the general contractor. Many assumptions. It's an initial approach. And we turn it into 4D. Next step, we want to pool it. So we get the project manager, superintendents, their feedback. It still exists in P6, but now we're starting to use their durations, their productivity, and rather than us just assigning what we think it should be. And yes, we do collect that, and sometimes they come back and tell us that it's not going to take 5 days, it's going to take 8 days. And I have superintendents that get mad at me when I say we're going to change this to 8 days. No, that sub's just sandbagging. No, they should do it in 4. Like, that's not how we're trying to do this. We want their participation as well, because as it turns out, they're doing that scope of work. And we can tell them all day they're going to do it in 4, but if they don't get it done in 4, we just look like a fool. So that's another piece of pushback for those of you who are asking where I got pushback before, is actually getting the contractor's feedback. Everybody seems to be under the assumption that all the trade contractors are just going to sandbag and ruin the whole schedule. What happens is yes, we do see the sandbagging, and there is some, but if it drives out the whole duration of the project, we tell them, no, that doesn't work. You've got to get more crews, you've got to do it faster, and we don't just take what they say and put it in. We talk back and forth about it, and we figure it out how to make it work. And then that exists still in P6 or Synchro. And then the rest of the level 4 is our make ready, and that's that 6 weeks on the wall that you guys saw. That's where we start to see the sandbagging disappear. When we first started off all of the civil work on the project I showed you with the piles and the critical path, all of that civil work taking place, the civil sub was sandbagging really bad. They kept, oh, that'll take 10 days, and we put it up on the wall. But then we update it the next day in the next meeting, and we look, hey, that's 30% complete. It looks like it's only going to take 4 days. And because at day 2, it was halfway done. No, it's going to take a bunch more time. And then it was done, and he only sandbagged once. And after that, he started going for real durations. It just came out so fast. And the beauty was, it wasn't at day 4 we found out he was done. We knew he was halfway done at day 2. And even though he kept saying it was going to take another 8 days, the next trade coming behind him then went ahead. They started getting their duct bank ready to go, because they knew they'd be able to come in with a duct bank over the top of the sewer line. And so it worked itself out very nicely. Our level 5 is our last planner. It's also on the job site wall, and that's our area foreman getting involved. There's your PPC. This is what they will do. And then we do actually track the PPC with the daily look and the daily huddles out there in the field, and this is what's done and reports back. So this is kind of how I flow from my CPM to my 4D, CPM and 4D through to my lean and combine it all together. Thoughts or questions? Yeah, they do it or they don't. You're in the meeting. It's just right there. So, if any of you, a lot of this comes from the AGC CM Lean program. It's probably the best tool I know of if you want to understand Lean, last planner, and that. I highly recommend it. So, all right. So what we end up with is something like this. Not very often in the past, I'd get the owner of this involved in the project. But that owner then was out there with his tablet. So, of course, someone else was handing him the tablet. He didn't want to drive it himself. But he wanted to see the model compared to current construction and what it was really going to look like. And we just see people getting involved. And that's what we're really after. This comes back to ownership. Not just ownership because this guy was writing the checks to pay the bills. It was ownership in that he wanted to be a part of this process. And that worked out very nicely for him and for us. All right. I came back to this one for feedback and ownership. Once again, this was a little bit hard to understand. This was a very detailed model that took a lot to put together and to pull into it. And it's only a 6-week look ahead. But what we see is ownership coming from the foreman in the fields. And they will be quick to point out, as you guys talked about earlier, that it's all wrong. You got to change all of it. The hardest thing that I've learned to say is, thank you for telling me how screwed up I am. I'm glad you told me. Now I'm going to go try to fix it. And that works really well. And if I stop saying thank you, I stop getting feedback. And so and that's, that early on I showed you the slide of the skeptic. I really believe that. I want people to tell me it's messed up. In fact, really, I just got to show the critical path of a project upcoming to a room full of schedule experts. It'd be great if the people would walk up afterwards and tell me everything they thought was wrong with that, right? It's being vetted. It's not done yet. It's in the process. That I love the feedback. So now, one of the thoughts that you guys had earlier, where do the models come from? How do we get them created? This should be done a lean way. I really want design and engineering models. I want those level 3 models from them. If I have to go back and recreate them, it's wasted. I'll still do it because I'm better off by having my 4D in the long run, but I have to waste money getting those created and time. And that makes it hard sometimes to come back and get it done in time. When I'm in that scenario, I have to go back and create my own models. Then I am pressed for making it all happen. And I have to try to slow guys down a little bit. But we're getting better at that. I'm finding people that are faster. What? Sometimes. It depends upon the market and what we're doing. But yes, sometimes we self-perform on concrete. Really, I usually don't need a lot of models for self-performing concrete. I can let that get ahead of me without too much of a problem. But I really want to try to get some of the underground done first. If we have the model, we pull the quantities and we do all that. If not, we just do it the traditional way. All right, I'm trying to do the bionic man scenario. If I don't have the bionic man, I just use good old Steve Austin and we run with what we got. So, all right, so I can use, if I have those models, it's really easy to create a CPM level 3 schedule. I can take those together to create my 40 CPM at a level 3, level 300. Okay. Then I come back for my trade feeder feedback. Oh, that was terrible. Trade vendor feedback. There we go. And the shop models. That's how I know what models I'm getting back from my contractors. If the specs require a coordination drawing, a shop drawing, I expect them to model it. If it doesn't require anything like that, it doesn't need to be modeled. It's a very simple one. Then I can combine those. That gives me my level 4 CPM. And it's in 4D. Of course, this is a hard bid scenario. Right? There's my line. If I have the privilege of working on this prior to that or having things earlier, then it's some sort of negotiated. I can have my CPM level 2 up front. And I can use that to drive the design process, because that design process then has to meet that early schedule. And then that then goes forward into my level 3 model. So that's the scenario that I'm after. And I can work in either of those scenarios. I like the green scenario a lot better. I think most of us like the green scenario better, right? The whole idea of hard bid work, it's the value myth. There's no real value there. It does not save the owner any money overall. Thoughts, questions? Did I miss anything? Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, I can. So that is the beauty of having my own computer. We are now going to divert from the previously scheduled program real quickly and see how fast I can find something for you here. Because it is very scheduling based, and I probably should have had this in my presentation. That's a great question. So for recording, for people that might not have heard, the question was, how do we make sure that our federation and our model creation process supports the schedule as it is without being drawn out and too long? I've had them get away from me on the coordination process. They just kept coordinating and wouldn't turn an area loose. And so we recently had to take and produce, and it's now part of our regular plan, something that looks like this. Let me zoom that up for you. View, zoom. Let's go maybe 200. Okay, so model delivery schedule. So what we have to do is we have to come back, and we broke out the areas: south level 0, which is basically your underground area there, north level 1, and this is how we should be delivering our models. If we wait to the very end to say, oh look, here we have a coordinated model on December 3rd, we're too late, we've screwed everything up, because the other early work has to start sooner. But when I lay it out like this, and I get my underground done for that south level area, and I have it produced, and it's coordinated and ready to go, within 5 weeks, I have beat the submittal process. I am now faster than a traditional process, because they are starting to do work. And then they come around later, and then they start to do the additional steps and the additional areas, and then those, usually we can stay ahead. Generally this works. I got caught on this once because my interior walls were structural, and I was used to interior walls being finishes that came in later, but when interior walls are structural studs and they support the slab above them, your MEP coordination, you have to have your MEP coordination much faster than this. So you have to watch out for that. You had a thought, sir? So So summary for the recording for those who might not hear is that he's actually scheduling this aspect, not just in a side document. He's actually putting that in the CPM schedule and man loading it to track and help the contractors understand how to stay on schedule and get it done. That's great. It's great. So we're actually taking this as an outline to get them started, and we hadn't been rolling it into the CPM. I probably should. We'll have to look at that in the future, but we are pulling this into our walls and the planning on the wall and our last planner system. When is each area going to be deliverable and done?
Have you ever brought your BIM guys into the last planner system so they can see the board? Because a lot of times you still have to do a last planner system when you're facilitating a BIM coordination meeting.
So
that way they can start seeing.
it's kind of a loaded question. Have you ever brought your BIM guys into the last planner? I try not to have BIM guys, right? I try to have the project scheduler that's doing it. I try to have my shop drawings are created by the trades. It's the same person that normally creates their shop drawings. So if I have this foreman or the superintendent from that trade in there, then, but yeah, I try to, yes, they're welcome to be involved. They're welcome to come. They're very rarely on site to attend a last planner meeting. Now we do WebEx quite often for them. And of course, we do implement last planner virtually for our coordination process. Weekly meetings, daily meetings, coordination meetings, tracking small increments like the plan showed each week. Did you make progress? One of the things that I implemented that works quite well is a $500 fine for anybody who doesn't have their models in on time. Now, that in the past would be very, very hard to enforce. But right after that, I say your $500 should be donated to a charity of your choice, and you just provide the receipt. And that changed everything, because now it's not about the big bad GC collecting money. It's about supporting the team and having a slap on the wrist if you don't support the team the way you should. and then the team enforces it. It's not the GC enforcing it, it's the other guys saying, you didn't get your models in last week. Did you do your donation? Come on. And that changes everything. I haven't had to enforce that. I've got the models in. Because, what's the guy going to say? No, I'm not going to donate. Then he looks like a Scrooge. So it works out really well. Great conversations. We're doing good. Any other thoughts, comments? Have I gone overtime? Am I supposed to be done? Or I have 15 more minutes? 15 more? Good. Okay. I just did so poorly at the schedule when you started out. I got to keep track of it now. Okay. So advanced logistics. So in the past, this is what we would have done in order to show our logistics. I would take, this is a very large project, and you color it all up. Each building's a different color, different zone, different area, try to understand everything. And then you have a critical path schedule. You turn out with it, and everybody's trying to understand the flow of the project and which building it goes through. Everything's color-coded, so our critical path goes to the food service building. This is your food service building right here, and everything seems to work. As you pointed out, earlier, the critical path might be through a delivery or an outside procurement. In this particular case, it was. The owner was providing the metal doors and hardware. Very common for a prison project. They don't like to go buy those off the shelf. And so that was our critical path. So we're used to doing that the old way. We also would go into each of the individual buildings and then do a key map. These are the areas, or take a trade like the storm drain and break it up in individual areas, and you start producing all of these. I think I had 15 or 20 of these keys that you could try to publish with the schedule for people to understand how the schedule worked. Now, for advanced logistics, we use our 4D. So this was a project that we were putting together advanced logistics on, and we got detailed on this one. We had to, because the logistics were really tough. And so even just looking at it, you guys could probably count how many crews we had removing earth on this project. Right? If you watch it a couple times, it's going to be pretty easy to count how many concrete crews we have making pours. You look at how many different areas are green at one time. So this is an isometric, this is a plan view, this is isometric from another angle. So if you look down here at the plan view, you can start to count, and you get a pretty good idea of how many concrete crews this took to pour those slabs and come up with it. We're not digging through plans. We're not digging through everything else, right? Am I having to go look at resource loading to figure out how many tower cranes I have on the project? No, I don't have to do a resource load on that. I can just look at it and see how many tower cranes I have. You'll see the same thing on buck hoists. You'll see this logistics area. That's the thing that used to always get me on my logistics plans. We would produce a logistics plan, and it was usually pretty good for about the first 4 months of a project. And then the logistics plan had to move, and it never seems like anybody ever did, what's it going to look like then, and then, and then. And so you'll see as soon as we get a significant area of the basement or under slab parking of this project done, this whole lay down trailer area just goes away. And then we start talking about, well, where's the logistics hill? Well, it goes down in the basement area. But now we're actually getting that ongoing logistics. We're looking at the equipment and where it goes. And I've got another one that does about the same scenario later. But this was a pretty tough project with all the piers, and it gets the water and everything else. And once again, very lean in the creation of this. Daily meetings, daily production, daily review. So yes, we had to change the 4D schedule probably 10 to 15 times. Every meeting we came out, we made a change. Every meeting we came out, made a change. But we weren't necessarily having to review it in a video like this every time. We can wait and produce the video at the end. We just go through the 4D itself as we're building things. I'm mainly spinning my wheels waiting for this to disappear so everyone can see my logistics. As soon as that disappears, I'm going to the next slide, unless there's a question. There it is. All right. Logistics change. We go through the project. It moves on. And then when we're all said and done, we can do all the landscaping, final paving, demo our temporary roads. You'll see that temporary road disappear here in a little bit. And then we're all good to go. So the whole idea behind it, and this is called the McLeamy curve, and it's a BIM-based thing that you'll see at BIM form and stuff like that. Early on in the project, we have a large ability to make a change. That includes the schedule. We have lots of options and lots of flexibility. We can change resources, we can make adjustments. The further we go through the process, the less opportunity we have to make adjustments and change. That's why it costs so much to recover a project at the end. You just don't have options. You have to throw money at it. Now, when we first start off, the cost of a design change, the cost of a schedule change, the cost of making the adjustment is minimal. And as we go through the project, it gets costlier and costlier to fix things. Our traditional processes were this black line, and we made the majority of our decisions during, this is the designer's standpoint, they made the majority of their decisions during construction documentation. When we're talking about building a schedule, we're talking about making the majority of the decisions way over here. We are way past the curve on where we should be making those decisions. But if we do construction like we should, design, build, IPD, CM at risk, CM agent, and we're getting involved then we can start building our schedules here, and we develop them as we go. But we can make the majority of our decisions way up front where we have that cost advantage, we have that time advantage, and then we refine that plan as we go. Yeah, we're still making decisions over here. We're still recovering from a weather day, or we're still recovering from a key project member ending up in the hospital or something like that. Those things are still going to happen. But we have such a refined plan coming into it that they're not such a big deal. They're not the straw that breaks the camel's back. They're just another straw to carry because we've lightened the load as we go. And that's overall what we're attempting to do. So once again,
Better than he was before. Better, stronger, faster.
better, faster, stronger. So now some of you might have seen before, you have the option of spending a bunch of money and making it look really pretty. Let's look at a pretty one. Is something more like this. So a recent project that this would be the proposal schedule, and we won the project, and now we're moving forward with it. Okay? So in the proposal stage, high-level schedule. Yes, it's equipment loaded. That is a pile rig, representing that there's a pile rig moving across there. 2 pile rigs, 2 pile crews. This one is easily changeable. This one updates as the project goes along. Right now, we're just looking for updated models. As the design continues, about every month, every 2 months, as they design build this, we'll get updated models. That steel model is the steel order. So the concrete's moving and the pits are still moving based on the design. That steel order is in. That is a level 400 model for steel. And it is already in our schedule and it is set to go. And so we just keep moving forward and we pick up the pieces that we can. I don't have to wait for it all at once. I just develop it as it comes, as it goes. Right now I have no under slab plumbing or anything in this project. As soon as I get that model, either design model or fabrication level model, I'll put it in. I should get the design one first, I'll put it in. We'll see how it goes, then we'll get the fabrication one later, we'll put it in and see how it goes. And just keep building it out step by step at a time until we end up with the super schedule, where everything's done on time. Hopefully we set a new standard for this client. We want to build this facility faster and better than they've ever had a facility built in the past. You had a thought? Yes. So we don't necessarily have to wait for the final version. I don't want to wait for the final version. I'll take the version each week and assign it, and as it grows, the things that are assigned stay, and then the new things I can usually add in fairly simply. I'm okay with building it out and not having to wait for the final version. And then, because one thing it does is it helps me identify the things that changed from an intern model to the next step. And the benchmark, aside from that, for construction purposes, I showed you the schedule that we have. Once that area is coordinated and everyone signs off on it, that's how they install it. When I get to that point, I have that good to go. Yeah. That's correct. If I wait for the whole project, I'm always behind the deal. I never can get the first area out time. But if I roll it out area by area and we coordinate it piece by piece, then we're good to go. That's right. That's right. And then we don't have the model out in the field very much. We send shop drawings out into the field. But those shop drawings are derived, derivative, representative, whatever term you want to put, they come straight from the shop model with no edits, no changes, and things like that. And so it flows fairly nicely once you get everybody educated and up to speed on how to, the changes in their process that need to take place. My trades have a hard time the first couple times they do it thinking about, we're just getting the shop drawing approved for one area? Yes. Just this, you got to get all your documents in, you've got to get all of your product data, your warranty, you've got to get all that information in right up front and fast. So that way it's all approved to go with it, but you don't have to wait for every single piece of the shop drawings to be done. Any other thoughts, questions? It's hard to wait to the end for questions. We've been asking them all the way, isn't it? I'd like to thank everybody for being here. I think that it's 11 o'clock and it's time for it to be done. Thank you very much.